So over $665 million has just been wiped out in one little hit. A nasty little trap that has been set over the weekend, and it's been one of the worst ones in a while. And the reason for this is because Bitcoin closed a record close, which is mad, but it then flipped immediately bearish. So I'm taking this week pretty cautiously. I expect you guys to do the same. Wait for clear confirmations. We're going to look at it in this video. Like always, smash the like button if you enjoyed this sort of content, and leave a comment. What do you think is going to happen next? Is it selling may go away, or are we going to go to the highs again? Now, the first thing we've obviously got to talk about is this. Bit of a weekend trap. Volatility kind of caught us all out. I've had a busy weekend doing normal live stuff, and it has been pretty choppy, pretty volatile. And it didn't do anything mainly on Saturday, but yesterday was pretty mental. Both long and shorts got liquidated. You can see the longs got quite a big hit over the last 24 hours here. The shorts obviously got hit too. There's been volatility both ways. And this is a perfect example of why chasing the pumps blindly can absolutely cause havoc in a cycle. In my opinion, the market has turned into hard mode. And we need to talk about that, and we're going to go through it in more detail later on. But the reality is here, we created a new high, a new high close, and then we just went. And I know some people in the comments might be going, well, it's fine, we're still at $103,000. And yeah, that's fine. But the structure has changed a little bit in terms of, well, we rejected. And with that rejecting, it's created this little cascadance of bearish structure across the altcoin market, Bitcoin market, and obviously the macro. We need to look at that. That is very, very important this week. Right now, Monday morning, as I'm speaking, the US Open isn't here yet. We're still early. So we need to wait and see what happens there too. So let's look at this in more detail. Now, I know it's very wishy-washy, but it is a clear rejection. We also have printed a bearish divergence on the indicator at the top. You can get that in Learning Crypto, by the way, if you're interested. But the reality is here, it's very, very clear. You do not want to have a clear and obvious rejection on one candle. It was a pretty brutal one. And that's the reality here. There's been divergences across the board with volume, low volume. There's been, situations where I think people are FOMOing in and getting ready for that move, but it ultimately caught them out. Feels like a trap. So that is a big point there. On the daily time frame, it looks a bit more clear and obvious. But as I've alluded to it, this was the highest close in Bitcoin's history. Just a bit higher than the previous all-time high. Obviously, the wicks are different, but that's important. We need to keep an eye on that. So yeah, is this the top? Ooh, that is a horrible question to ask you in the comment section. I don't really want an answer, but you can answer if you want. Triple top, maybe. I know it's very, very bearish, but that could be a real big interesting point. And I would just wait for the daily close and see what happens. But ultimately, if we remain in this range here, it might be all right. If not, we could be going lower. And obviously, there's potential targets here, which are already set. So we'll keep an eye on it. Now, my overall bias has, as I say, changed a little bit into more of a defensive mode this week. I closed my Solana long at the Friday point of, this region around here. I was pretty happy with my closure because everything kind of flipped a little bit bearish on my time frame. But the reality is here, we have had a big push to the upside. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's enough to kind of make you notice. And you can see here with Solana where it's going. And I'll talk about my trades in a minute. But as I've alluded to it, I want to personally be a bit more bearish and a bit more neutral sort of situation where I don't want to be like full bull tard because that's a problem. I'm watching key levels to see where we go. Now, obviously, yes, my time frame is a 12-hour time frame. It's a bit faster than a daily, but everything's starting to trickle down into those kind of almost bearish zones and into the EMA 21s. If we lose them and we rotate round, we may well be looking at potential shorts, finding some gaps to fill before we potentially go up again. Because yes, we are in a uptrend, but we are pulling back very aggressively. And that's where people get trapped. That's where, as I said before, if you chase the bumps, you're going to get destroyed. You need to wait. This is why I like to follow the market as much as I possibly can. I'm trading level to level. I'm not trading aiming for proper obvious swing levels. I am looking for momentum. I want to get in at certain points and get out. Alts and Ethereum look pretty weak right now, only because Bitcoin has dropped a decent chunk, and altcoins naturally will follow more. They do. It always happens, and I think people forget that. Even with that said, Bitcoin dominance isn't like doing what it should be yet. I've talked about this in a number of videos. Some stuff is, but we were always going to get this to pull back. We were always going to get a problem where Bitcoin will lead. And even on the stable currency dominance, which isn't looking terrible, it is still here and it's still quite low. We're in a downtrend here. Are we going to get that rotation back into the market of liquidity? But we do need to talk about the macro side of it. Now, firstly, the S&P 500 has been on a really, really big bounce. Has to hold key levels. It has to hold around where this range is, essentially, right? When you think, if you're going to talk about the obvious in the room, we've got to look at this whole area. Bear with me. Let me just draw it so you can see it. So this area here, where we've had a lot of noise in the past, we need to kind of get in here and hold in and around this region. You could probably argue a little bit higher here. The reason being, it needs to hold structure. And yes, it probably will pull back, but it also needs to hold in and around this region and not totally melt. It's broken structure. It's looking relatively good. But we'll see where we go. For me, you can't go lower than probably that candle here, realistically. So it's going to fall into this range. That is one big problem. There's another problem too. This news article has probably spooked a few people. Sell America is back as Moody's push 30-year yield to 5%. So the ratings have been downgraded on the US credit rating from AAA to AA1 concerning, budget deficit and ballooning rising debt, all that kind of bollocks, right? The problem is this is kind of creating a spark, and that spark creates market fatigue and sentiment turning to bearish. And you can see here it worries over certain things and is creating issues for certain things. We all know this, certainly for renegotiation of trade deals. This could equal tightening of liquidity. That could be a problem. So yeah, in my opinion, we need to wait for this to settle out. We also need to remember the obvious in the room. Altcoins, volatility, that won't be good, especially if you're going long. So be mindful of that. I would wait for confirmations first before you do anything. Don't just go short, because we may well bounce off this. It is uncertainty. Uncertainty is what the market does not like. And we're probably already going to see it. And let me just show you the likes of the Russell, for example, rejecting this level, could be pulling back. The NASDAQ and stuff like that, whereas the NASDAQ, there it is, could also be the same sort of situation. So we could be coming into a pullback in this week. Yeah, nothing. I'm going to talk about trading a little bit. If you want to trade with me, jump in Blowfin, link below. You get some fees back. Now with trading, I've said it before, I don't actively invest much in altcoins nowadays. I tend to trade them and I like to follow momentum and build an account. I talk about this a lot on Patreon. I talk a lot about how my strategy works on learning crypto as well. The reality is here, we are still in an unconfirmed market where we could be going much lower. I'm on the 12-hour time frame, as I alluded to it, and everything's starting to look pretty bearish, but ultimately this candle needs to close first. And yeah, you could argue you could have got a better entry here, but you kind of are risking it for a chocolate biscuit here. Now, with this been below the 50% mark, that's usually a good trigger. Normally, when this is going up, which is a stable currency dominance, going up and retracing, that is also a good sign. Its structure is what we need. So what I will be looking for is a confirmed closure and seeing where we pull back to. We are below the EMA 21 and everything. Now, this is Solana. I had a very, very good long on this. I closed, good profit. Are we going short? It's still unconfirmed yet. This could catch you out if you are not waiting. You got to wait for momentum. Don't look for the absolute tops. Don't look for the absolute bottoms, because that's where you could get absolutely, neutralized basically. Cautiously scaling into little levels is always better than aping into bounties, in my opinion. And you've got to preserve your capital, so to speak, and not try and get totally munched, because I personally believe the market has turned to hard mode and it's quite hard. So be mindful of that. There is other altcoin options as well. Sui, for example, is another situation here. Break below this level could be very interesting with your stop loss above this region, and we could be following the market going down. This is an obvious TP target, for example. So yeah, things are looking a lot more bearish at the minute, but not totally bearish just yet. Be mindful. I will say this, the stable currency dominance, as I've alluded to it, is probably going to pull back, and we'll see where we go. If that money then rotates back into the market, it might be absolutely fine. But the reaction of that one rejection on Bitcoin is pretty brutal. It might be totally fine. It might just be a little bit of a blip in the armor here. So yeah, I don't want to go too crazy with the shorts right now, because it's still unconfirmed until things really do change. So what I'd be waiting for is a real, well, if this gets even lower and then closes, it might be an interesting entry and a tighter stop loss just in case. But there is definitely targets down here where we can look at like the 140s. But again, if you go into the higher time frame, say the daily, for example, and if you're going to put a Fibonacci from the low to the high, we could actually be looking at the $150, $140 marks in and around that region for a potential pullback. That's pretty disastrous if you're looking at Solana. But if you're going short, it's not too bad. There's a potential risk to reward there. Just be mindful. So there you go. Enjoy the video. If you appreciate the honesty and the no bullshit, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. And let me know in the comments what your bias is. Are you bullish or are you bearish this week? For me, right now, it's not looking ideal, is it?